Hey, this is Sandy,
And Randy.
and we're here on AT Corner.
Being an athletic trainer comes with ups and downs, and we're here to showcase them all.
Join us as we share our world in sports medicine.
Welcome back to another episode of AT Corner. Today we are talking about something that's gained a lot of popularity, the use of vibration.
Vibration as in...
Hypervolts, vibrating foam,
Theraguns.
Theragun, vibrating foam rollers. We're ready to rock. Let's dive into this. So, the objectives of this episode is we're looking to explain the physiology of muscle vibration. It's not really talked about a lot because it is a new concept. Then we'll talk about how muscle vibration can be used before exercise, how it can be used for recovery, and then we'll talk about some of the limitations of the literature and how to apply this newfound knowledge.
Awesome, I can't wait. I feel like we don't really talk a lot about the research behind vibration.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the hypervolts and the theraguns it's kind of hard to call them totally vibration because they're more of a percussive device, but they still cause vibration. So I'm kind of reaching calling them vibration, but it's kind of the same idea.
It's a grouping.
Exactly.
All right, let's get into it.
So the physiology of muscle vibration, why we're here. I'm getting better at the sound effects. I hope people appreciate this. So the whole idea of muscle vibration is you put the vibrating device on the muscle and it causes the muscle to vibrate. What that does is it activates what's called a tonic vibration reflex. So the vibration is stimulating the muscle spindles, which we all know about muscle spindles. It leads to activation of the muscle, right? You get a little bit of contraction. It's the whole knee-jerk thing when you get the the reflex hammer and hit someone's patellar tendon, So that's one area where you could see where muscle vibration may be able to affect the activation of a muscle.
And what does that mean?
It'll mean more when we talk about how vibration is used before exercise, but the whole idea is you're getting more of a muscle contraction. So now the muscle's turning on through this modality.
Okay.
You'll also see an increase in blood flow with vibration. There's a couple ideas to this. Some of the idea is like, oh, well, you're activating the muscle spindles, which then activates the muscle. So you're getting small contraction and relaxation within that vibration cycle. And that contraction is causing muscle pumping, which we know muscle pumping can increase blood flow. And then also with the muscle contracting, metabolism has to happen in order for muscles to contract. So that newfound metabolic demand is now creating an increase in blood flow. So there's another idea behind that. I mean, it's kind of splitting hairs as far as increased metabolism, but because the muscle is more activated, more blood needs to get there. So that's the idea of how this can increase blood flow.
I would say increased blood flow is probably the primary reason why I use some of these percussive devices.
Exactly. And as we've talked about before in our other education episodes, increasing blood flow tends to be a pretty good thing, especially when we're talking about healing tissue.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole point of why we're going to talk about this, the application. So how do we use muscle vibration before exercise? You've used it before exercise, right? For your kiddos?
Oh, all the time.
And they love it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is when we do modalities before exercises, we're trying to get some improvement in performance, right? And a lot of times when you look at how do we improve performance is we look at how does the muscle act. And the literature behind how does a muscle get activated after vibration is very mixed. Some studies say it increases the activation, and then some says it actually harms muscle activation.
Interesting.
I know, right? So the studies that have shown improvements in muscle activation is you see improved muscle excitability, which means that the motor system's more excited to activate that muscle. It's easier for the nervous system to be like, hey, we're going to activate this muscle better. And what that translates to is improved muscle strength. After vibration, they've seen improved sprint times. And it may be small, but as we talked about before, even a small increase may be huge for, an athlete, I mean, you know what they say in football, it's a game of inches.
I mean, little gain is still gain.
That is true. some vibration studies have also shown an improvement in horizontal jump ability. So not vertical jump, but like a broad jump kind of style, right? So you're seeing that muscle performance can improve to where it can actually improve power, it can improve strength, and all that translates into improved performance.
Do you know the reason for that?
It goes back to what we talked about, like the physiology. You're stimulating the muscle spindles. So now the muscle spindles generate muscle contraction. Now the nervous system is ready to go. The motor system is primed and ready to activate. It's kind of like going off the idea of post-activation potentiation, which essentially is just saying that, hey, the nervous system is more excited to fire these motor neurons and it gets more efficient, which we know when the motor system's firing efficiently, you get better muscle contraction.
Okay, and do you know how long that lasts?
Some of the studies went into like about 5 minutes. Off the top of my head, there weren't a lot of like long-term, like let's see how long this lasts kind of wise. The only one that I remember is about 5 minutes, so I'm sure it can go a little bit longer.
So I'm thinking this specific effect would probably be better for like your track athletes, gymnastics, any of those like individual type.
Yes, and also don't forget that it's just this modality that's being looked at in these studies. So that's not the reality. You're not going to have your athlete walk in, grab their Theragun, just all over the place, and then just go straight to practice, right? They're going to do that. Then they're going to go do a dynamic warm-up, which we know helps prime the motor system and get the muscles ready and more efficient to fire. So keep that in mind as well. Just don't be like, oh, well, you got practice in like 30 minutes. This probably isn't going to do anything afterwards. No, because they still have to go do their warm-ups and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, you can't look at anything individually. We don't ever prescribe just one thing.
Exactly. Now, the studies that have shown decreased muscle excitability have shown that there's a decrease in force production, which if the muscle's not producing force, performance is going to hurt. Now, the caveat, the reason there's a difference in the different studies out there is because this decrease in performance is usually after a prolonged exposure or if the frequency of vibration is very high. So the idea is it kind of leads to a neuromuscular fatigue. That's kind of what they're thinking is the problem, right? If you're stimulating the muscle spindles for a long time and the motor system's firing for a long time, you're going to get fatigued. The nervous system's going to be like, all right, I'm tired of activating this. I'm kind of done. And then as we know, muscle spindles don't tend to respond well to long duration things. I mean, that's the whole thing about static stretching, right? It's a prolonged stretch. They don't like prolonged things. So then it decreases their drive, which if the muscle spindles are decreasing their drive, you're going to see an overall decrease in that motor output.
So application-wise, if we're doing this before exercise and it has the potential to decrease this force production, what you're saying is maybe we should limit application time.
Yes, and we'll talk about a little bit more of the specifics towards the end, but yes, you would, if it's doing before exercise, I would say go on a lower frequency and you don't have to do it as long.
Okay.
And then another key thing of why we do this before exercise is mobility. Who doesn't love mobilities? Mobility Monday.
You don't love mobility.
We're not talking about me. We're talking about our athletes. So a lot of the studies that have looked at mobility have paired this with foam rolling, right? Now we've starting to see more vibrating foam rollers come out, and that's kind of a big deal. When I first heard about it as a student, my mind was blown. I was like, whoa, that's cool. So when it's paired with foam rolling, it actually shows an improvement in range of motion, but it's no more than a regular foam roller. So don't worry if you're at a place that you're like, oh, well, I can't afford a vibrating foam roller. That's okay. Foam roller works just as well. But what they have found is the vibration actually decreases some of the pain associated with some soreness, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And then also the discomfort with foam rolling. Foam rolling doesn't feel good.
I think foam rolling feels good.
I'm glad you do, because most people think it's the worst thing ever. So the benefit of having a vibrating foam roller is the vibration decreases that discomfort associated with foam rolling.
So basically, if you want to spend $30 versus $80, pick the one that's going to make you feel more comfortable.
You could use that, and maybe the athletes will want to use it a little bit more. And the whole idea is the vibration we talked about how it activates, the receptors in the muscle, but it also activates the mechanoreceptors in the skin and surrounding and in the fascia surrounding the muscle. Well, as we remember from, our modalities class, everyone loved the modalities, I know it, is gate control theory, right? You stimulate the mechanoreceptors, you decrease pain. So that's kind of the idea that we're going off of why it decreases the discomfort associated with foam rolling.
Something that I actually use vibrating foam rollers for a lot is plantar fasciitis and also any kind of like arch pain or arch fatigue after exercise.
And how do you use it? You told me this and I was like, I'm intrigued.
Okay, so one of my preceptors had us actually stand on top of the vibrating foam roller. Of course, you stand on it when it's stopped, and then you either turn it on or someone else turns it on for you. Usually, like, you're holding onto something. You don't have to be like balancing like a log in water.
I was gonna say I could see my athletes messing this up.
Okay, so my preceptor had me do this, and I thought he was joking. But we turned it on for 30 seconds, and if you stand on the floor before, and then you do the 30 seconds of standing on top of the vibrating foam roller, and then once the 30 seconds is up, you stand back on the floor, your feet... It's just, you need to try it.
Night and day, huh?
It's night and day.
Well, speaking of vibrating feet, let's talk about vibration after exercise. So, when we use any modality after exercise, the idea is to improve recovery. Our culprit and villain we always think of as DOMS. Similar to what we talked about using a vibrating foam roller about decreasing discomfort, using vibration improves the pain perception associated with DOMS. So your soreness is improved when you use vibration or a vibrating foam roller. You get less sore compared to not using the vibrating foam roller or vibration in general. And again, a lot of it is due to, hey, we're activating the mechanoreceptors, gate control theory, that decreases pain. But also what's interesting is with the use of vibration, you actually see a decreased level of inflammatory mediators. And as we've talked about in previous episodes, that's a huge component to DOMS, is you get these inflammatory mediators that we always talk about with injury, but remember, DOMS is like a very small scale injury, so an inflammatory response is going to be needed to create repair. Well, these mediators have chemicals that cause pain or increase pain. So if you flush them out sooner, theoretically, you should decrease your pain. And the reason that you see a decrease in inflammatory mediators is probably due to the increase in blood flow associated with vibration, right? If you get more blood flowing through there faster, well, more inflammatory mediators are probably going to get cleared out. So that can kind of explain why you don't get as sore when you're using vibration compared to just foam rolling or doing nothing.
Okay, so far what I'm hearing about vibration in general is this overarching theme of comfort.
Yes, it makes you feel better.
Solid.
Yeah, I mean, it's still important. I know some people don't like to go that route and they want to see more evidence for other things, but, sometimes that subjective, hey, I feel better is important.
Oh, huge.
Now, as far as like, okay, well, I'm choosing between different modalities to use, what should I use? Well, maybe a bad thing and a nice thing about vibration and like vibrating foam rollers is there's really no difference to that in other modalities. So what I thought was really interesting were the improvements in soreness and like recovery from vibration was equivalent to massage and stretching and just foam rolling alone. So if you're at a place where like you don't have time to do manual therapy on, a lot of kids and you don't want to work with your hands too much because you just can't, or,
Or you need to just save yourself.
And save yourself. Vibrating foam rollers and vibration do just as well as massage. So that is kind of a nice thing. It's, I can spend like $80-$90 on a vibrating foam roller, get the same effects, and I can still have time to do something else.
Okay, so we talked about all the comfort things and all the performance effects. What about like limitations to application?
Yes. So the limitations of this literature, we already kind of talked about one as far as, what most people think about or what's out there on the market for clinicians are like the Theragun, the Hypervolt, like modalities like that. And the problem is when you're talking about vibration, you talk about the frequency of how the head moves, how fast it moves, and how much it moves, also known as the amplitude. Well, a lot of these studies use machines that have a very small amplitude. We're talking like the moving head thing moves like a millimeter or like 2 millimeters. Well, some of these like clinically applicable machines move like 16 millimeters, so it kind of tends to be more of a percussive device. So it's almost leaning more towards like, I think I remember reading it's closer to like kneading, like with your hands. But it's still, because it's oscillating and has a frequency, it's still causing some vibration. So I just kind of clumped them in there. But remember, that is a limitation to what's out there. So you have to kind of apply that. A large amplitude can make a big difference. Also, some of the durations of these studies aren't really clinically real. Like the studies that did prolonged durations did the vibration for 20 to 30 minutes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's never going to happen.
No one's standing there vibrating someone for 20 to 30 minutes in one muscle area, mind you.
Honestly, I think I'd do like max 1 minute.
Exactly. And come on, these kids don't even like to foam roll. They're not going to vibrate foam roll for 20 to 30 minutes.
No, and I mean, I would never even prescribe that either.
So remember, those are kind of limitations to this literature.
Well, yeah, I think my muscle spindles would be tired after 20 to 30 minutes too.
Exactly. So remember, keep that in mind. I still wouldn't do vibration for a long time just because I don't want a decrease in performance. I want to just get something primed and ready. So keep that in mind. But yeah, 20 to 30 minutes, no one's doing that. So now the application part, what we're all here for. So the idea is if you want to improve muscle performance, you want to go with lower frequencies and maybe a shorter duration of the treatment. I would say maybe no more than 1 minute, just because we're adjusting for the higher amplitudes that these modalities that we have use. There's a big difference between 1 and 2 millimeters and 16 millimeters, right? So when you think about it, if you're putting a Theragun or like a hypervolt on someone's leg and that sound head's moving 16 millimeters, into the muscle, it's going to put more of a stretch on the muscle spindles, the fascia, and all that. So I would adjust it, like maybe don't go more than 1 minute in a certain area, maybe take it really short and then also use a lower frequency. A lot of the studies have kind of been iffy about which one's best. It usually sits around 50 hertz. So, if you do 30 hertz, like I think the hypervolt, the lowest setting is like 30. And then the second level is like 54 or something like that. If you sit between those two, you're probably going to promote more muscle activation than fatigue or muscle deactivation. So I'd say stay around there for those. Like those lower intensities, lower durations will probably help improve muscle performance.
Yeah, so lower with muscle performance makes sense because you're not trying to fatigue.
Exactly. Now, if we're talking on the flip side and we're trying to improve DOMs and soreness and all that, I would say a higher frequency would be great. If you want to take it to the max, I believe the vibrating foam rollers run on higher frequencies and they get closer to about 100 hertz. That's fine because, again, we're stimulating mechanoreceptors, and the more higher of a frequency, you're going to get more stimulation there and they're going to feel that vibration more. So they can do that, or just tell them to go what's comfortable, whatever makes them feel great. Awesome. They did one study on vibration on muscle stiffness, because some people like to use this for tight muscles. It didn't really improve muscle stiffness, but if it feels good to the athlete, hey, let them roll with it.
Yeah, we're all about comfort here.
Exactly. And that's a big component to recovery, is if they feel that they've recovered and they feel better, that's a win. That's recovery.
Okay, so action item time. What I've learned today in summary is that if we're going to be doing these vibration or percussive things in before exercise, you want to do a lower frequency for a shorter amount of time so you don't fatigue the muscle.
Yes, I'd agree with that.
And then if you're doing soreness, you want to do maybe a little bit longer periods of time with higher frequencies.
Yes, I'd agree with that.
Awesome. That sounds like really easy to apply.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, it's your judgment on how you feel about this. Because, again, I just want to make it preference before, people come on and be like, hey, well, that's technically not vibration. We're extrapolating vibration research to these handheld devices because it's very localized. And then there's a difference between whole body vibration and local vibration. So we're really kind of stretching on this, but it's still an idea that's out there and why we're doing these modalities. So just keep that in mind, that we're having to adjust a little bit Like, this is my clinical philosophy, and this is what I found kind of works, and my interpretation of the research.
And of course, you guys, if you want to do your own research, you can view the citations that Randy used for this episode on our website, which will be in the link in the description below. And you can also tell us what you guys think of vibration and percussive therapy on our AT Corner Facebook group.
Yes, I'm intrigued to hear what people say about this.
Yeah, if you guys aren't a part of it, go ahead and head over to facebook.com/group/atcornerpodcast. There's only one question to get in. It's how did you hear about our podcast? And then you're automatically approved to join. And then there's always an episode discussion, so you can go ahead and comment in there. And then if you guys are new, we do every other episode as education or stories. So this was an education episode. Next week, we're going to be doing stories, and I think we're doing parent stories.
Oh, that'll be fun. I'm sure everyone has something good about this one.
Oh, yes. I'm excited. So if you guys ever want to submit your stories, you can. Usually we put our stories in our Instagram stories. So if you want to keep an eye out for those, you can. You can also email us at atcornerds@gmail.com if you have a story that you would like to share on our show.
Also, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please don't forget to share, rate, and review.
All right, Randy, you want to wrap it up?
Absolutely. Thank you for helping us showcase athletic training behind the tape. Bye.